The town where I spent my childhood wasn't the kind of place that stood out on any map. It was a quiet, forgotten place, nestled between low hills and endless fields of corn and wheat. Nothing much happened there. People lived their lives in the slow, predictable rhythms of small-town life. Work, family, church on Sundays, the kind of place where you didn't need to lock your doors because there wasn't much to fear, or so we thought. I was in my mid-20s when I met Kate. She was new to the area, having moved in to take care of her aging aunt. We clicked pretty fast after meeting at a bar that everyone around town just called The Spot. It was the only place where anything ever really happened, but even then, it was never much. After a few weeks of dating, Kate and I were spending most weekends together, trying to find ways to keep ourselves entertained in a town that seemed designed to bore the life out of you. One Sunday afternoon, we decided to take a drive. The air had that crispness that only comes in early October. And with the leaves just starting to change, it felt like the perfect way to kill a few hours. We didn't have a destination in mind, just the urge to get out and see something new. That's one thing about growing up in a rural town. You can always find a road you've never been down before. After about an hour of driving, we ended up on a road neither of us had seen before. It wasn't on any map I knew, but then again, in a town this small, that wasn't saying much. It was a narrow dirt road that twisted through the forest like it had been carved out by someone with more time than sense. The trees closed in on either side, their branches forming a canopy that made it feel like we were driving through a tunnel of leaves. We didn't talk much, just took in the surroundings and enjoyed the quiet. That's when Kate pointed out something up ahead. "What's that?" I squinted and saw it too. An old, weather-beaten sign just barely visible through the trees. It looked like it had been there for decades, the paint chipped and faded. The sign read, "Mason's Mill, established 1,898 inches with an arrow pointing up a gravel path that veered off the main road." Neither of us had ever heard of Mason's Mill, and we were both curious, so I turned the car down the gravel path. The road was rough, full of potholes and cracks, like it hadn't been maintained in years. After about a mile of bumping along, we reached a clearing. There, nestled between a stand of towering trees, was the mill. It was a large, crumbling building made of stone and timber, with a tall, crooked smokestack rising into the sky. The place looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Moss and vines clung to the stone walls, and the windows were broken or boarded up. There was an old water wheel, motionless and decaying, resting in the creek that ran beside the mill. It looked like something straight out of a history book, forgotten by time. We got out of the car, the crunch of gravel under our feet the only sound. The air felt different here, colder, thicker. Kate shivered and pulled her jacket tighter around her. "It's kind of creepy, isn't it?" I nodded. There was something off about the place. It was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. The kind of quiet that made you feel like you were being watched. Still, curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to take a closer look. The front door of the mill was slightly ajar, hanging crookedly on its hinges, so we just stepped inside. The air inside the mill was damp, and the smell of rotting wood and mildew hit us immediately. The place was a wreck. Old machinery, rusted and broken, scattered across the floor. The walls were covered in graffiti, and there were signs that other people had been here at some point. Empty beer cans, cigarette butts, and the remnants of a fire in the corner. We wandered around for a while, poking through the debris and trying to imagine what the mill had been like when it was still in operation. But the longer we stayed, the more uneasy we both felt. It wasn't just the disrepair or the desolation of the place. There was something else, something we couldn't quite put our finger on. As we were about to leave, Kate stopped suddenly. "Did you hear that?" I listened, but all I could hear was the wind rustling through the trees outside. "Hear what?" "Footsteps. I swear I heard footsteps." Her voice was low, almost a whisper. I tried to brush it off, telling her it was probably just the wind or the old building settling. But deep down, I felt it too. That prickling sensation on the back of your neck when you know you're not alone. We decided it was time to go. As we headed back toward the door, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. A flash of movement in the shadows. I turned, but there was nothing there. Just the empty, rotting interior of the mill. My heart was pounding now, and I could tell Kate was just as freaked out as I was. We hurried outside, back into the clearing where the car was parked. I was reaching for the car door when Kate gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "Look." I followed her gaze to the edge of the clearing, where the trees met the open space. Standing there, just barely visible in the fading light, was a figure. It was tall, dressed in old, tattered clothes, and its face was full of rage. And it was watching us. We both froze, unsure of what to do. But before we could react, without warning, he just sprinted toward us. We jumped into the car, slammed the door shut, and I floored it. The car bounced and jolted down the gravel path, the tires kicking up dirt and rocks as we sped away. Neither of us spoke until we were back on the main road, the mill far behind us. "What the hell was that?" Kate finally whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. We never went back to Mason's mill, and I never found out who or what that figure was. But every now and then, when I drive down that old road, I can't help but feel like it's still there, watching, waiting for someone else to stumble upon it. The strangest part? I've looked for Mason's mill on maps, asked around town, but no one seems to know what I'm talking about, as if the place never existed. Or maybe, just maybe, it only appears for those who aren't supposed to find it. It's funny how memories fade, but the fear remains. I can't remember every detail of that day, but I'll never forget the way it felt, like we had crossed into a place we didn't belong.